Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my dream world. This episode, I'll wrap up my thoughts on the final two episodes of Dragons Rising Season 2, Part 1, and then I'll go into my overall thoughts on this season, as well as a brief analysis or opinion of each major character of this season, so far at least. This is part 3 of a 3-part discussion, so if you haven't seen the first 2 parts, please see them because I will be building off what I said, and you'll get used to the format of my videos for these types of discussion videos. Also, while I have been including my raw reactions to each episode thus far, I kind of started to become extremely drained during these last 2 episodes, so I won't be including any more clips of myself. But with that out of the way, I will start with episode 9. The beginning of this episode kind of gives us a little backstory on Roz. Turns out that as a child, he got trapped in a ditch and was unable to get out. But as he felt doomed, this huge light appears, and we can only assume that this is a very powerful being that ended up saving him, and he now continues to refer to this being as his master. This was the scene that I needed for Roz as a villain, these little spotlights of him as a child. Because we're beginning to see the backstory of him and why he's heading in the direction that he is and why he feels the way he does about strength and why he's become so vengeful. Like, we're starting to figure that out. We don't have all the information we need, especially not about who his master is and how he got to where he is today. But we're getting the building blocks for it, and I like that. It's kind of what I needed from him as a character and as a villain in this case, because we've had like a season and a half of him so far, and I was just kind of like, okay, but where's this guy coming from this whole thing? So I'm really happy that we got that scene. After that, he kind of orders Cinder to destroy the Cloud Kingdom and the rest of the people in it. Very dark, actually. This season is quite dark compared to some of the earlier, and even season 1 of Dragons Rising, it did feel quite dark. But as for our ninja, we get into the trio of Kai, Sora, and Wildfire, so I'm going to cover their arc first. They're still struggling to get on top of the ravine that they almost died in, and they do end up reaching the top, but they're immediately met with some members of the Wolf Clan. Later in the episode, they do end up taking them down, and Sora kind of gets the idea to disguise themselves as the wolf mask warriors, because they're like, hey, we can just take their costumes and masks. So that's pretty much what they're doing for the whole next episode into the next episode, I would say. Wildfire also kind of realizes that her leg is healed, and she's like, oh my gosh, look, the dragon was actually right. And Kai is like, excuse me, Miss Girl, what did I tell you from beforehand? Because, okay, if y'all have seen, and I hope you've seen my first 2 parts, or at least briefly listened to them, I don't want to reiterate my thoughts too much on Wildfire, because I'm enjoying her right now, but this scene is the reason why I wasn't really liking her too much beforehand, because she had many moments like this, and I was just like, ugh, like it just it's one of my like character quirks that I don't like, but I covered that in a previous episode, so I'll move on. They end up reaching the rest of the Wolf Clan, and Roz and Cinder have Euphrasia and the other 4 monks ready to sacrifice. Jordana ends up appearing, and she's forced to admit that Eren actually ended up reclaiming Bonsal, which I'll kind of cover in a little bit, but I'm covering the main trio, this first trio at first, and she shows up and she's like, oh my gosh, like, I don't really know what to say, but I kind of don't have the spell. So Cinder kind of like taunts her about it and is like, oh, look who's like not number 1 anymore. And this is to be expected, but like I said in earlier parts of this discussion, this rivalry was kind of whatever to me, so I didn't really like care for it, because like, dang, Cinder, you were really practically simping for Roz at this point, which is, I get, okay, I don't know. I digress, but it was just giving really like suck up behavior, and I was like, okay, y'all need to like get it together. Wildfire and Kai do end up agreeing that they need to free the captives by blasting through their chains, but they have to be careful because if they get caught, they're screwed. Lloyd is kind of continuing to see his visions, which show the ritual is beginning, and one of the Forbidden Five is released in his vision, so that kind of like snaps him up. But as for him and Nia, they don't really have much this episode, so I'm just gonna skip right on to our next trio, Zane, Cole, and Gondolaria. And they're still trapped in the hut because of Jordana trapping them and taking Bonzel. So they are going through like desperately a bunch of bizarre potions and artifacts, and eventually some adorable ones too, because we get puppy Cole, who was absolutely precious, and that made me so happy. But Zane ends up getting hit with this like size changing spell that turns him like huge and then like itty bitty. It was giving Alice in Wonderland. I kind of like that was fun. But Cole eventually realizes that, hey, we can actually use this to our advantage, even though Zane is miserable right now. So when Zane turns tiny, he kind of fits him through that keyhole, and then once he turns big again, they're able to get out. So right after this, though, they end up spotting the Cloud Kingdom, and it's rapidly losing altitude. So they're like, oh, we should probably go check that out. And that's kind of their arc of this episode. Eren and Ryu, who are our duo of the team right now, end up encountering Jordana with the captured Bonzel. So this is before the ritual really starts. I'm just going in order of arc rather than order of actual chronological events. But after this, like, they end up fighting, and after a bit of a struggle, Eren and Ryu actually end up taking her down and reclaiming Bonzel. Though Eren also doesn't know how to drive, so this kind of sucks for him because he almost kills them. But as we know, Raz has gone after him once he's alerted by Jordana, and eventually finds him, and they're swiftly overpowered. Raz kind of taunts Eren and tells him, like, you haven't grown in strength at all since we first fought, and he knocks him out. He also even tells him that he needs to get a master to actually, like, train him in strength and stuff, and it pretty much cements the setback that Eren has been feeling this entire time, and it was a little hard to watch, to be perfectly honest. I felt really bad for Eren here. Lloyd and Nia end up finding him, and he initially thinks that it's his parents. This has happened a few times now, and I'm kind of wondering how his parents are going to tie into this, like, struggling arc of him not being able to improve as fast as he can, not being able to embrace an elemental power, because I think it's been confirmed that Eren, in fact, does not have an elemental power. And that's okay, but it's just kind of like, I'm curious how they're going to tie in his parents to this arc, because clearly it's very meaningful for him. So second half of the season, we'll see where that goes. And the episode basically ends with Raz arriving at the ritual with Bonzel, which forces the disguised trio to either act fast or face doom. Overall, this episode is very go, go, go. Like, there's a lot going on in many separate different places. That being said, I do think it was structured pretty well. We do kind of get to see where everyone's going from here and how everything's going to end up tying together. I do think that Kai's trio and Eren-Ryu duo have the most interesting parts compared to the others, but I did enjoy the bit of backstory that we got for Raz, which seems to be a huge part of his character, which is great. Like I mentioned, this solidification is kind of what I've wanted and needed from the Dragon's Rising villains, and we're starting to get that from Raz, and that's great. Good episode and a very strong lead-in to the finale. So this final episode of this first half starts with Lloyd and Nia finding Eren and Ryu, and he's recovering from the beatdown. He's pretty bummed about it. That's kind of where we leave off with them. And then we also have the trio of Gondolaria, Cole, and Zane. I'm just going to go over their arc real quick because it's separate. So they're now on the Cloud Kingdom, and they have to try to stop it from crashing. They free any remaining captives, and they go to the motor room to fix it. We get the mech power up again, which I think has happened several times at this point. So honestly, I was just kind of like, okay, y'all need to, like, get snappy and get to it. Like, we've seen this power up once. I don't think we really need to see it all the way through again. So that was a little annoying, but it didn't really matter. Zane eventually figures out that they need to, like, stop the motor from falling, and he's like, oh, Cole, can you try with your mech? No, the mech's too small. So they end up going back to the size changing spell so that he can hold the kingdom in place. But he's actually able to save it with a little bit of help from Euphrasia. In fact, I think she actually ended up doing most of the work with her wind powers because obviously this isn't in chronological order, but she ends up getting freed during the main plot and then goes up to help the Cloud Kingdom. So that was a really fun moment for her. But as for the main group, Roz is preparing to start the ritual, and Cinder is once again taunting Jordana about losing Bonsall in the first place. But while this is happening, Kai and the others are trying to free Euphrasia and the other captives. But when the gong starts being struck, they end up being affected because they are wearing wolf masks, so that kind of like causes them to fall. Wildfire ends up blasting her mask and everyone else's masks off, but of course this ends up causing them to get caught. I will admit, the little burnt hair moment with Kai did give me a little chuckle, so that was funny. Luckily, they do manage to stand their ground against the wolf warriors and their mechs. Oh, excuse me, and like I said, they do manage to stand their ground. The wolf warriors are pretty much getting taken down by Wildfire, the mechs. And Cinder also gets way too cocky. Like, he literally just casually waltzes onto the battlefield thinking that he's gonna eat, and he totally didn't. Sora almost immediately traps him and prevents him from transforming. And interestingly enough, I think that this kind of like solidifies that the smoke teleportation isn't like actually teleportation. It's literally them turning into smoke, not like disappearing into it. So even though he technically can go into that form, if he was surrounded by that trap, he wouldn't actually be able to get out because he can't go under it, he can't go around it, he can't do anything like that. It's not like he's dodging some kind of fireball or anything. So the barrier that she made wouldn't let him escape, and I'm assuming that that's the same way Ash's smoke worked with. We just didn't see him, we only saw him fighting Kai, not anyone else. So like, I know some people got a little bit confused onto whether it was actual teleportation or if it was like a transformation sort of thing, so I thought that I'd mention that here. Also, my man honestly doesn't seem to have the best battle IQ either, because he only realizes after a big amount of struggle that he can literally just nab any wolf mask off of any of the fallen warriors to do his shatter spin move. So yeah, I'm gonna be honest, I was a little unimpressed with Cinder here because he was eating in the first two episodes except against Kai, but everyone else he kind of just like blew right through them except for Kai and kind of Lloyd. We didn't really see a proper 1v1 against Lloyd, but you get my point. So I was a little bit disappointed in Cinder. However, Wildfire manages to free the captives, but the ninja are just too outnumbered, and Kai's mech gets damaged, and he gets like knocked out actually for a while, and Roz is able to open the portal to release the Forbidden Five. So and even though they don't have the sacrifices, he says like, I just need an unshattered soul, like anyone who hasn't been affected by the Gong of Shattering. So it really can be anyone. He eventually reveals this, but luckily the rest of the main team shows up right on time. Cinder does end up breaking out of Sora's trap, and like I said, he eventually does get a mask in hand to perform the shatter spin. He knocks almost everyone out, but right as he's about to take out Nia, Kai jumps in with Rising Dragon technique, and he manages to take Cinder out pretty quickly while Lloyd takes on Roz. But Roz ends up hitting Kai with his hammer right towards the portal. Ryu tries to save him, but it doesn't work, and now Kai goes through the gateway, and one of the Forbidden Five is able to be released. However, with Kai gone, Nia kind of like has her "oh no you didn't" moment and is able to unlock Rising Dragon, and Lloyd is also able to do this when he finally managed to embrace the visions he's getting, like for freaking finally. But also, I don't want to shade him too much because he is traumatized, y'all. He has PTSD. I know sometimes we like to clown on Lloyd, but my man has been through a lot, and these like panic attacks and visions have really been hitting him hard. But it was really great for him to finally be like, no, I have to actually take the advice that I've been given and apply it, and I'm able to go up to the next level when I do that, because Lloyd is the strongest ninja at this point, but he holds himself back. So this was like there you go, Lloyd moment. There you go. Turns out Kai and Bonsall are kind of like speaking in the gateway. Bonsall is like, oh, I'm gonna try to close off the gate, but Kai, you have to get out in time or you're gonna be trapped. he has a really, really great and selfless moment here that genuinely had me cheering. He tells Bonzel, like, if you're able to close the gate, don't worry about me, just get it closed. The growth on this man that he's had since season 1 and even since seasons like season 11, it's so like really amazing to see on him, because we haven't had, in my opinion, since like season 5 really had a really great Kai focused season. Like, I know there's debate on like that. I'll get into that in a minute, actually. Getting off topic. But Nia gets taken down by Noct, who is the Forbidden Five member that has managed to escape, and she's about to get taken out, like used as a second sacrifice. So Eren attempts his object spin jutsu in a last effort to save her. Seeing what he's about to do, Sora actually ends up giving him a boost with her powers. This saves Nia, and Eren doesn't notice that Sora helped him. So, oof. Jordana ends up getting hit with a blast after losing control of the spell thanks to Bonzel, which I now realize was like fighting her this whole time. That was why she was like, oh my gosh, why is it fighting me? I feel like the spell is countering me while I'm trying to maintain it, and this causes the gateway to close entirely. In a last desperate move, Raz calls on his master, and the entire Wolf Clan is transported away to somewhere, and the blood moon sets. Rontu and Egalt are also freed, so yay. So with the Wolf Clan, Raz demands Noct's loyalty and kind of just electrocutes him by putting this bug or like machine thing, I don't know what we want to call that, but a device on him. Like he's like, yeah, I got a control device, haha. And after getting hit with that blast, Jordana is now acting a little strange. So I guess we'll see what's up with that. Raz is interrupted when he gets summoned by his master, who seems to be quite upset, but Raz is like, don't worry, this is not over. We are going to continue on with this plan. The team reunites on the Cloud Kingdom, and we get a really cute moment between Lloyd and Cole reuniting because they haven't really interacted, and they haven't actually this entire season. Of course, the team is also very sad about what happened to Kai, and Bonzel is also praised for her selflessness. Lloyd congratulates Eren on saving Nia, though since Sora was the one who did it for him, I have a feeling that this is now going to have negative consequences in part 2 and beyond. So I'm interested to see where they're going to take that. Kai, in the meanwhile, ends up meeting Bonzel in person, and they're both trapped. However, Kai is like, I am not going to give up, because Ninja never quit. And that's where we end. Overall, excellent episode and finale to the first half of the season. I feel like this segment was able to wrap up the first half of the plot very well while still leaving some stuff open-ended, such as Eren's success not being what he thinks it is, our villains kind of like ending up in a new zone with a new plan, and of course Kai, who is literally trapped in another dimension of some sorts with no viable way to escape. So like, yes, this could be the end of a season, but there's still so much more to cover, and I think that worked really, really well. Kind of unpopular opinion, this actually is not my favorite episode of the season. I do see that it is one of, if not the highest rated of this season, and maybe one of the highest rated of Ninjago, period. But the reason it wasn't my favorite is that I did find some small anticlimactic moments that bugged me a little bit, but I'll address that in our overall thoughts and character opinions, so I'll digress for now, because this was still a really, really amazing episode, and I am so hyped for the second part, so I'm looking forward to that, and I hope that y'all feel the same, because this was awesome. So, if you've been paying attention, you've noticed that I've praised this season a lot, and as I've written out my notes and made these videos, I stand by that opinion. I loved this season. I was watching it while I was not in the greatest mindset, so I did have to go back and rewatch a couple of the episodes, and I stand by this. This season was excellent. Very nice highlight for me. I do have a few minor critiques and everything, but I loved this season, so don't get me wrong. Since this is only the first half of the season, I don't feel right ranking this season amongst others for now. I will say that I enjoyed it, and I'll only compare it to part 1 of Dragon's Rising Season 1, so episode 1 to 10. I think that's the easiest way for me to compare. So far, I do think I prefer the pacing of this season, especially at the beginning, because Dragon's Rising Season 1, it was good, ever since the beginning, but I feel like it took from like episodes 4 to 5 to really start to kick it up. And that makes sense. I mean, it was the beginning of a new series, and there was a lot of exposition, getting used to new characters and stuff. But I really feel like it was when we started interacting with the dragons, learning more about powers, and then eventually going to the Cloud Kingdom and meeting Euphrasia. Like, that was when I really was hooked onto Dragons Rising. I was hooked on this season from the beginning, so I definitely preferred the pacing of this season. But when it comes to finales, there was something so magical about Lloyd like interacting with that source dragon and seeing all these visions and having that like big final stand against Imperium. And it genuinely had me tearing up because I was like, oh my gosh, I don't remember the last time Ninjago has been this good. Like, I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, I don't like I'm not like that. I love Ninjago. Even the most recent seasons, there have been many that I've enjoyed. However, this was kind of like me having like a, this is my show. I love this show so much moment. So, yeah, I think maybe I prefer the season 1, part 1 finale, but I still think that this was a great first half of the season, and I do think it was better overall. Like, it had a better overall arc than season 1. And since DR season 1 is in my top 5, I think DR season 2 is going to be in that range if it keeps up this momentum, so I'm really excited. I will cover some weaknesses for, like, per se. I don't really have many complaints about this season, but I'm going to point out some things that maybe I would have liked to see, or some things maybe that could have been improved on. I did feel a pretty significant dip when it came to engagement starting at episode 6. Like, episodes 1 through 5 had me hooked, and then in episode 6 I was kind of like, okay, not quite as engaged. And this lasted until about episode 8 or 9 even. So I don't think that any of these episodes are bad at all. I just think that at that point there were like way too many arcs and not like enough events to fill in that space. And one of the arcs was far more entertaining than the other. Y'all know at this point, hopefully, that I absolutely love Cole and Zane. Those two are my two favorites. I love all the ninja, but they're my two favorites. And their interactions with Bonzo and Gondolaria were fun, but their side of the story was just not as engaging as the main teams for mine, because there's just not as much character development. It's more them kind of figuring out what to do with Bonzo and then getting thwarted now and again, but there wasn't as much dynamic and not as much like building blocks when it came to dynamics and character, so it just wasn't as engaging for me. I kept anticipating getting back to the main team during their arcs for quite a while. I also like I mentioned, I did find a few parts of the final fight anticlimactic. I absolutely loved that Kai was the one to end up taking on Cinder and was the one to actually beat him, not once but twice. But I do feel like it was a little too easy for him. I mean, in the first fight, I liked it because we see that he's learned his lesson from fighting Ash. Because if you rewatch that fight, Kai was struggling. And he said, yeah, that ain't gonna happen again. I learned my lesson. I'm gonna do better. And he, like, pretty easily took Cinder on when nobody else was able to do so. So, but when, like, Rising Dragon was unlocked, I was like, great, this is gonna be such a big final fight. There's gonna be an epic 1v1 between these two. I didn't really feel that. He did unlock Rising Dragon, and he even acknowledged, like, yeah, I'm not used to this. Like, this is hard, and just because I did it doesn't mean I'm gonna sweep in and, you know, knock everybody out. But he did. I would have liked to see a little bit more tension between their 1v1 before Kai actually took Cinder down, but instead it literally took him like 10 seconds. And that was just kind of sad for Cinder, especially since he's supposed to be like a beast in comparison to everyone else, and is said to have studied the Shatter Spin longer than any of them had studied Rising Dragon for sure. So I just found the fight between those two a tad bit underwhelming. It wasn't quite the epic showdown that I thought we were going to get, but then again, we still have part 2, but that was just a little disappointing for me. I also found Roz simply putting a control device on Noct a little bit anticlimactic, because Noct is supposed to be super powerful, and he gets taken down by a little device. Yeah, it just felt a little lazy, and it made Roz look way stronger than he actually is, and I was just kind of like, eh. And of course, people have already mentioned, like, the callback story, because we've gotten those elemental mech shorts, and then immediately he comes back to the Land of Lost Things in episode 4, but we don't get in between either. Like, we don't get between him leaving the Land of Lost Things and the elemental mechs, as well as the elemental mechs between him coming back. That's an issue that I have, especially as a Cole stan, and I really hope that's addressed in part 2. But again, these are all some, like, just small little nitpicks, critiques that I would have liked to have, like, built on even more. However, like I said, those are some minor critiques. There's just so much good about this season that I'm not, like, I don't feel like those things hinder it in any way. I loved the character growth we saw from Kai. He's still the same sassy and strong-hearted red ninja that we've seen since the pilots, but he's a more mature version of himself and has just become so incredibly selfless. Not that he ever wasn't selfless, but he did have his struggles with it. And we saw that in season 1, season 4, and even later seasons, like season 8? Season 8 and 11, I believe. We kind of get those, like, slight power struggle arcs from Kai. So it was just amazing to see how much he has grown. I also loved the focus on mental health, which we specifically see with Eren and Lloyd, and even Wildfire to some extent when it comes to her healing arc. So I loved seeing that. I also felt like this season had the right amount of nostalgia, such as hearing a new character's perspective, Bonzel's perspective of Wu, and bringing back an underrated element, at least in my opinion, but it's still tied into how far these characters have come since the early seasons, not just in combat, but also personality and spiritual journeys, and how they're still continuing to grow while still having shown growth from earlier seasons. So yeah, perfect balance, right amount of callbacks, as well as the right amount of building on the new world that the ninja are now living in. So as you noticed, I had mostly praise throughout this entire season, and I stand by that opinion. So in all of my discussion videos, I usually like to go over my highlights, like favorite character, favorite episode, so on. So like I said, I think my favorite episode of this season was episode 5, The Spell at the Waterfall. There was, as I mentioned, the perfect balance of nostalgia and world building tied into it, and that's pretty much my favorite part of this season. And it genuinely had me getting emotional, because I was just like, wow, this is so, like, visually beautiful, and I love how it's tying in a lot of things. I love how it's exploring different characters' personalities and how they react to things. I love it so much. We also had the amazing juxtaposition of Egalt's teachings versus Roz's teachings, and some great moments with the main team as they're beginning to train with the dragons. I was just so engaged in that episode a lot of times. I think it's become I was so engaged in that episode the entire time. That's what I meant to say. And I think it's become a comfort episode for me. So in terms of, like, pure favoritism, pure rewatchability, I think that one's going to end up being my favorite. Least favorite episode was actually episode 6, the one right after it. Because although we got those great training moments with Kai and Nia, as well as the progression of Eren's arc, I did find the trio plot to be dragged on a little bit too much with this episode, and the desert scenes with Dorama felt very unnecessary. And no, it's not just because I don't like him, it's because I really felt like that was just there to fill in space, like, between finding Mysterium and leaving the monastery. I don't really feel like it contributed all that much. But again, like I said, I don't, like, hate any of these episodes. I wouldn't skip any of them. They were all good. I just feel like episode 6 was, like, good, fine, while a lot of these other episodes were, like, amazing. So that's why it ended up being my least favorite. But my favorite characters out of the main cast, Kai. hands down, Kai was my favorite this season. He was serving both in terms of growth and combat and just learning, like, and I love how they didn't make him OP, but they did give him his moment to shine, which honestly he has been lacking for some time. We saw a lot of growth in season 1 of Dragons Rising as well in his dynamic with Wildfire, but I feel like this season really solidified how much he's grown as a person with his powers just in general, but still being, kind of like sassy and cocky and, but we love that about him because even though, I mean, it's not really cockiness at this point, it's confidence. He's confident in his abilities, and that's just awesome. Confident and humble is what we needed from him. And I just really enjoyed watching him throughout this entire season. Like, I have no, like, negatives about him at all. In terms of supporting cast, I would say that my favorite is Egalt. I have a soft spot for grumpy old men, and he's basically a grumpy old man dragon. So I love that. I also love that even though he's very, like, strict and gruff, he also is very, very wise. And his teachings just seem so impactful. Like, I'm getting, like, a combination of Wu and Garmadon type teaching here, and I just really loved to see it. I also really liked Rontu, but I think out of the two, Egalt is my favorite for sure. He's also voiced by Andrew Francis, by the way, so that kind of might be a little biased. But I just really, really, he was my favorite, like, new character that was introduced. I'll give a few honorable mentions. One is Nia. Even though she wasn't, like, super major this season, I loved her, like, balance of being caring and nurturing as well as being a badass. Like, I really liked that because she, helps Lloyd through his panic attacks, and she ends up actually saving the whole group during that fear test as well. So she had, like, great range even though it wasn't a super major role. I loved her moment with Jay, not actual Jay, but where she was like, that is not my Jay because you are the love of my life and you know exactly who I am. Like, I loved it. She honestly slayed this season, and I loved her little tangent with Kai as they were learning Rising Dragon technique. Like, it was just wonderful to watch. So honorable mention to her. She just wasn't as focused as Kai was, as Aaron was, as Lloyd was. So I was just like, okay, well, but I gotta give her an honorable mention because she was serving too. Aaron was also great. I really am interested to see which direction they're going to take his arc. And I also really liked Lloyd's little arc of those visions and learning how to tackle them and how mental health has impacted him throughout this whole thing. So those are my honorable mentions. Now, I guess I'll individually go into each character. Like I said, Lloyd, I'll start with him. Good arc, very interesting to see those visions, very interesting how even though he struggled with them, he was able to apply them in some way, even though he didn't quite know how to do so at the time. He was kind of annoying in some parts as a result, though, and he also had his moments of being a little bit dumb. Lloyd was a little slow, like he was just like, oh, where's the master we're looking for? I wonder who it is. And Eagle's like, my dude, my man, my dumb little green bean. But I love Lloyd, so I'm not shading him, but it was just kind of, that moment kind of had me like, I don't think I need to talk more about Kai. I absolutely loved him, every part of him. Honestly, I think he's in my top 3 ninja because Cole and Zane will always be my 2 favorites. I just can't change that. They're too solidified, but Kai is freaking amazing. Best he's ever been since season 5, in my opinion. I know some people liked him in season 7. I'll cover that when we get there in my nostalgia trip, but for me, I haven't loved him this much since season 5, so I'm so happy with that. And Aaron, like I said, interesting arc. I definitely see where he's coming from. His struggle is very, very valid and also a little bit hard to watch. I also am wondering if maybe he's a little neurodivergent. I don't know if this is a headcanon, but he had those moments of being like, I can't tell if this is sarcasm or not, or like, are you just being nice, or do you actually mean that? Like, he had little moments like that, and even, like, that's just a headcanon for now, it was kind of relatable for me, so I really like seeing those little tidbits of personality that he has, and how he's kind of like the opposite of Sora, both in terms of, like, being giddy and upbeat, sweet personality. Not that Sora isn't nice, but like, she's a little bit more straight man type character. But they also have like completely different perspectives when it comes to social media and about critique and about everything. So I really loved seeing his dynamic with Sora and their contrast. And then I guess because of that, I'll get into Sora. I think she's still my favorite of the new three, though she also kind of had her dum dum moments throughout the season. Like, she was like, dragons aren't ninja. And I was like, you dead said that to Rontu's face. Like, girly. I do kind of like that she was a little bit less focused this season, because like in season one, she was kind of the main of the three new kids that have joined the team, and then in this season it seems to be Aaron, while Wildfire was kind of her own little arc throughout this whole thing as well. So it was kind of nice to see her still have that presence. She has also grown a lot since season one of Dragons Rising, so it was just really nice to see how she's more confident in herself now and is still willing to learn, but also still has those doubts like while she was training, but she's getting better and better, so I love seeing that. Nia, again, less relevant, but just queen behavior throughout this whole season. Wildfire. Okay, I've talked about her a little bit. I like her better than I liked her in season one. Like I've said, I just don't like dumb characters that are also like super arrogant. Like, difference between Kai and Wildfire. Kai is now confident instead of cocky. Wildfire is very cocky. And that's annoying when she's also a little bit slow. But she is growing a lot. She's definitely growing on me this season, especially with her moments with Egalt. I definitely saw that. She was pretty annoying in the first half, but in the second half, I definitely began to warm up to her. I really still love her dynamic with Kai, and also she seems to have a budding relationship with Sora now, and I really like that. Like, we love girl power together, and she had that sweet moment with Nia too. So I'm hoping that she kind of grows with them now that Kai isn't there anymore. So I'm really looking forward to seeing her without Kai, so that we can see more dynamic with her. She might technically be my least favorite of the like 9 main cast, because we have the 6 OG ninja and then we have Wildfire, Aaron, and Sora. She's probably still my least favorite of the 9, but I'm warming up to her. So yeah, I'm basically gonna, my voice went nuts there, but I'm basically gonna go to group together Cole and Zane, because while they're definitely different characters, they kind of had their own separate arc. They weren't as relevant to this season, but they did have some really fun dynamics. I do kind of rank most of the characters above them simply because there was more exploration and development there. But I love a Cole and Zane bond. They really just work really well together, because while they're both serious, you also have like sweet, funny Cole, and then you have Zane's more like straight man, but still it's kind of giving Aaron and Sora in some ways, but like more grown up. And those two are my faves, so y'all know that I loved them. Their arc wasn't as interesting, probably because there wasn't as much development between Bonzel and Gondolaria, so it just wasn't quite as engaging for me, which was a little bit disappointing, honestly, because when I saw them together, I was like, I'm so excited, but you can't have everything, and the main plot was amazing, so I'm not going to complain too much. But yeah, I enjoyed them. Woo, or Spark. Sprite? I forgot his name already. Spirit Woo. I find that very fascinating. And I'm a little disappointed that he kind of just got cut out after like episode 7 or 8, I think, like after he interacts with Jay. So I was just kind of like, oh, okay, well, I guess he's gone for now. But I'm kind of interested to see where they're going to continue to incorporate Woo. And again, I loved Spell at the Waterfall. It was really awesome to see that kind of extra layer to him, how he feels about Garmadon, how he feels about the team, how he really is wise, and how he interacts with the world. So it was really nice to see that flashback. Interested to see how his spirit form continues to aid our team. Jay, unfortunately, not much to say. he's still brainwashed, clearly. But they're definitely setting him up for something. I mean, a lot of people are saying villain arc, but it's like, is it really gonna be a full throttled villain arc, or is he gonna like eventually snap out of it? Because at this point, he's brainwashed, so it's not like his fault that he's completely gone. Like, I mean, in his head, he hasn't completely gone bad. So I'm just kind of interested to see. I really hope he's in part two more consistently, because, I mean, Jay might not be my favorite ninja, but like I said, I adore all six of the OGs, so I'm just kind of like, man, I need some Jay. Because even in the flashbacks, we had such a cute moment with Cole, and like we see how strong his relationship with Nia is, because after all this time, she still refers to him as the love of her life. And I bet all the JS stans were screaming. I was screaming. And I'm not even that big of a JS stan. I do ship them, but I was just like, during that moment. So I really just want to see more of him. Roz. Again, more interesting than before, for sure. We're getting those layers of him that are starting to bring more to him as a villain. But I still don't really care for him as much. Like, my favorite villains were Moro and Harumi, strictly in seasons 8 and 9, by the way. But those two, like, we got their backstory, we got their motives, we, like, saw that from the beginning, and it built over the course of the season or seasons. And then it just really hit home with not a full redemption, but, like, a moment of realization where they're like, oh my god, they still have some humanity in them despite being so lost. Roz, I'm not quite getting that from him yet. Like, he's a good villain, but he's not a great villain for me. I know a lot of people like him, so that might be a hot take. But, yeah, just being honest here. But I am interested to see more of his backstory, more of his master. Yeah, interested to see more. But next I'll go to Cinder, our new villain. Ooh, okay, I'm about to get flamed by all of his stans if they see this, but he had a really, really strong start in episodes 1 and 2, especially with his status as the Elemental Master of Smoke. I know that led to a lot of questions regarding Ash, the previous Master of Smoke. I'm kind of thinking that Ash either died or that we had a situation where an element naturally passed down like it did for Rei and Kai and Maya and Nia. There's also that idea that Cinder may have stolen Ash's powers somehow, which could be interesting, but I'm pretty certain that they're not the same person. But the reason I went in being very, very, very interested in Cinder's character is season 4. We're going back all the way. Smoke was a very overlooked element. Ash versus Kai is one of my favorite fights in season 4 because even though Kai, like, is more powerful than Ash is, he gave him a serious run for his money and showed that even if you're not the most powerful, if you use your element correctly in battle, you can be a force to be reckoned with in combat. So I was really looking forward, because Cinder from the trailer just looked like a complete beast, and both Cinder and Ash do display this. So, but the thing about Cinder is that he does seem to be quite a bit more powerful, but also quite a bit more cocky, because he went into that final fight being like, I won, girl, but he didn't. He actually kind of got whooped, and I was a little bit disappointed in that, like I mentioned before. And after episodes 1 and 2, he kind of just faded into the background, and then didn't really impress me in those final 2 episodes. He went from soloing the entire team to getting decked by Kai with ease. And like I said, I'm all for the Kai development, but I was just kind of like, man, this could have been so much more interesting. Like, low-key, I found Kai versus Ash a better fight because there was so much more tension there. Like, obviously we knew Kai was going to win. They weren't going to just eliminate him there. But he was hanging off that bridge more than once, and like those two were going head to head, like really beating the crap out of each other. And it ended with Kai outsmarting Ash in the end, which was really, really cool to see. So yeah, Cinder actually, like, obviously Cinder's the more developed character. I know people have like said like, oh yeah, Cinder's so much better than Ash. Like, no, duh, Ash had no freaking lines. But like, as a fan of season 4, I was like really, really fascinated about what they were going to do with Cinder, and while he delivered in the first 2 episodes, I don't feel like he did all the way through. So that's my mini rant about Cinder. Again, we still have a part two, so this very well could change. But as of now, I'm kind of meh about him, to be honest. So, yeah, a little disappointed, but I'm looking forward to see what he does in part two. Hopefully, it's interesting. Jordana. Honestly, she's just annoying to me. Like I love female characters, like I want to support the female characters, but she just annoys me. Her shtick kind of gets like, it's funny because genuinely I do forget about her sometimes. Like I just don't really care for her as a character or as a villain. Um, but she is very smart. She was kind of the brains of the group. Roz kind of needed her there. And she kind of seemingly has been even further corrupted there at the end. So I am actually very interested to see where they're going to take her because there's something going on there. And I wonder if this is going to be like she becomes a threat, or will this bring a redemption in some kind of way? We don't know, but she was definitely like twitching a little bit there at the end. So I'm kind of like, ooh, interesting. Bonzel, great concept. Not my favorite new character, but her episode did become one of my favorites. I just feel like once that episode was over, her arc didn't really like bring as much because it was just like protect Bonzel. Oh no, administration, protect Bonzel. Oh shoot, Wolf Clan. Like it was just kind of, it didn't really give depth to her after episode 5. However, yeah, I like Bonzel. She was fun and interesting to listen to, and I was pleasantly surprised by the direction they took her character in. So yeah, I like Bonzel. Gondolaria. She's a little quirky. I don't feel like super strongly about her, but I do like her. She was kind of like the comedic element that Cole and Zane's little arc needed, especially once Bonzel was, because we have like three pretty serious characters there, and then Gondolari comes in like, hello everyone, and it was just kind of a fun mix. Again, their arc wasn't as interesting for me, but she's voiced by Queen Tabitha St. Germain, so yeah, that kind of automatically makes me like her. But I'm interested to see if she's just going to kind of fade into the background or if she's going to continue contributing. But, I'm kind of like, I like her, but she wasn't my favorite. Egalt and Rontu. Like I said, Egalt was one of my favorite characters of this season as a supporting character. He had such a great impact. But I haven't really talked about Rontu yet. I really liked her, and even though she didn't have as much depth as Egalt did, I loved her interactions with Sora and Wildfire. Like, she checked Wildfire in a, like, clear-cut but still professional way, and I was like, yes, queen. She also checked Sora a few times, too, and she was reasonable but still, like, blunt and not taking any BS type thing. So I really, really loved both of them. They were great additions to this series. I hope we see more of them. Geo. We still haven't seen too much of him. I like his relationship with Cole, and I like that whole little group with the Finders. I think it's just really cute and so in character for Cole. So I just really liked them overall. But he's not the main character, so we didn't really see much of him. I'm not too upset about it, but I'm looking forward to see him being sprinkled in here and there. I also hope we get the backstory on Cole and all of that, and that would be the way to see more of him. So that's kind of what I'm hoping. Euphrasia. Like I said, if you've seen the earlier episodes, Moro stan here. Like, heavily Moro stan. But I like the way his arc ended, and I honestly don't want it to be tampered with like Rumi, but, yeah, even though I would love to see Moro be incorporated in some way, I think he's good with his arc being ended, so I don't have a problem with Euphrasia. She's cool. I like her. I loved her that we now have a look for her without her hood, and she had some, like, genuinely clutch moments during this season, and even though she's a beginner, she tried her best, and she was taken on, like, she was ready to fight, even though she was like, I might not win, but I'm gonna go in there and do the best that I can, so... Oh, excuse me. Hats off to her. Forbidden 5 and Noct. A little bit of a disappointment because they hyped him up only for him to get snatched by Roz almost immediately. But then again, we did see some pretty strong power from him. like at the beginning when he was going up against Nia and the rest of the group after first being released. So I'm also wondering if maybe this is the type of thing where they're only like they're the Forbidden Five are the biggest threat when all of them are together, and we've only seen like a little bit of just him, so I'm not going to write him off. I think there's potential there. I'm also kind of looking forward to seeing, like, once maybe he gets out of this situation, he's probably not going to appreciate the way Roz is treating him right now, so I'm kind of hoping for like maybe a backstabbing type thing, or maybe like a power dynamic clash there. So I'm not writing him off. I didn't really care for him as of now, but we'll see.
Oh my gosh, you guys, while I was editing this, I realized that I'm gonna get canceled because I forgot to include Ryu in my character discussion. So I'm gonna do that real quick right now. I love Ryu. So fun. Such a cute presence. He's grown since last season, literally. And we get to see a little bit more of him improving, training alongside Sora. Yeah, he struggled a little bit at first, but he's still growing, and he saves Eren, learns how to fly. Like I just really like Ryu's presence in the series as a whole. Super fun, additional supporting character, and still adorable. And even though he's not a baby anymore, but I love him.
But yeah, those are all my thoughts on the major and supporting dash minor characters of this season. If there's someone I didn't mention, please let me know. I'll go ahead and put it in there. Overall, I love this season, and I am so hyped for part 2. I think it's going to be awesome. I'm not going to jump the gun, but I'm very optimistic about it. I'm perfectly happy to elaborate on any of my opinions. I'm happy to also hear anyone else's and discuss. All I ask is that we're respectful, and I'll just mention this briefly again. Any rude or hateful comments, I'm going to just delete and block you. No questions asked. No interaction. Bye. So just a warning. I hope it doesn't come to that. But otherwise, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you to the people that just recently subscribed to my channel. I really appreciate it. And I have an exciting video planned that I'm going to be tackling on May 1st. So hopefully that video will be out shortly after then. It's going to be pretty simple, more of a review discussion. And I also now have a TikTok where I'm going to be posting like most of my raw reactions of shows like as I'm watching them and stuff. So if you want to see that, I have dropped the link onto my channel homepage. But please like and subscribe to this video if you enjoyed it, and I hope you all will join me as I continue to post content, which will hopefully be more frequent from now on. So yeah, I'll see you all next time. Bye!